Red dust, weathered granite, and dry salt crusts stretch across a flat horizon under a clear sky. Beneath this ground lies a subterranean architecture that defies the surface. What is remarkable is not the scale of the anomaly itself, but that it sat unmapped by scientific surveys for over a century, passed over in plain sight. How does a continent that appears geologically dormant hide active seismic rifts, deep salt oceans, and buried river valleys directly beneath its topsoil? Later in this series, we will examine a state border surveyed 130 meters out of position along its entire length, and an underground town built into opal shafts where thousands of residents live below the desert floor. For generations, cartographers assumed the interior of the continent was a uniform ancient shield worn flat by time. That assumption was reasonable given the horizontal terrain. The first crack in that belief opened when geophysicists began drilling through the cover and sending acoustic waves into the basement rock. Fact 50. The shattered impact crater of Lake Acraman. Deep within the Gawler Craton of South Australia lies a geological scar created 590 million years ago during the Ediacaran period. While the surface shows only a shallow salt lake, geophysical surveys revealed a shattered impact structure roughly 90 kilometers in diameter. A giant asteroid struck the crystalline basement rock, fracturing the crust and blasting a debris cloud across the region. For decades, the origin of shattered volcanic rocks around the lake remained disputed. In 1986, geologist George Williams identified shock metamorphosed quartz and shatter cones at the site. Confirmation came when researchers matched the ejector to a distinct layer of shattered rock buried 300 kilometers away in the Bunyaroo Formation of the Flinders Ranges. Fact 49. The buried palaeochannels of the Yilgarn Craton. Across Western Australia, ancient river systems that once drained the continent lie buried under dozens of meters of sand and kaolin clay. During the Tertiary period, over 40 million years ago, heavy rainfall carved river valleys across the granitic shield. As the climate dried, wind-blown sediments backfilled the valleys, sealing them beneath the desert floor. Geoscience Australia used airborne electromagnetic surveys to map these hidden waterways, revealing subterranean channels over 100 meters deep holding hypersaline aquifers with salt concentrations 3 times higher than seawater. Fact 48. The dark marine shale of the Toolabuk Formation. Beneath the dry sheep runs of outback Queensland lies the remains of a subtropical inland sea. Roughly 100 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, the Eromanga Sea covered a third of the continent. Stagnant seafloor mud hardened into the dark shale of the Toolabuk Formation. Excavations by the Geological Survey of Queensland and local paleontologists near Richmond and Hughenden recovered preserved fossils of marine reptiles, including the apex predator Kronosaurus. The dense shale bed remains one of the richest marine fossil deposits in the southern hemisphere. Fact 47. The Ice Age pavements of Hallett Cove. Located 21 kilometres south of Adelaide, Hallett Cove preserves physical proof that Australia was once covered by massive ice sheets. Around 280 million years ago, during the Permian period, the continent was positioned near the South Pole as part of Gondwana. As glaciers moved northwest, granite boulders trapped beneath the ice acted as cutting tools, carving deep striations into 500-million-year-old Cambrian slate. Mapped in 1875 by Professor Ralph Tate, the glaciated rock surfaces prove the erosional power of moving ice before tectonic drift shifted the continent northward. Fact 46. The subterranean salt strata of the Amadeus Basin. Thousands of meters beneath the red dunes of the Northern Territory lies a salt deposit formed 800 million years ago. During the Neo-Proterozoic era, an inland sea evaporated, leaving halite and anhydrite layers over 1,000 meters thick in the Gillen Formation. Santos and Geoscience Australia identified these deep salt beds using seismic reflection profiling near Alice Springs. The salt strata act as an impermeable seal, trapping natural gas, while demonstrating Central Australia was once a marine basin subject to extreme evaporation. Fact 45. The post-glacial clay trap of Cow Swamp. In northern Victoria, within the Shire of Gannawarra, sits Cow Swamp, a hydrologic basin formed by glacial drainage shifts. Situated on Yorta Yorta country, the basin accumulated heavy, impermeable clay that trapped floodwaters from the Murray River system. Excavations conducted between 1968 and 1972 by anthropologist Alan Thorne revealed human skeletal remains dating between 13,000 and 9,000 years ago. The clay chemistry preserved the burials, providing evidence of continuous human occupation through the transition from the last ice age. Fact 44. The artesian pressure engine of the Mound Springs. Across South Australia, thermal groundwater bursts through the desert surface to build stone towers. Powered by the Great Artesian Basin, Rainwater that fell 2 million years ago in Queensland travels through porous Jurassic sandstone beneath a fifth of the continent. Pressurized water escapes through faults in confining rock at sites like Wubma Kadabu Mound Springs Conservation Park. Emerging at constant temperatures between 30 and 45 degrees Celsius, dissolved calcium carbonate precipitates out of solution, constructing limestone mounds up to 20 meters high. Fact 43. The cavernous karst plain of the Nullarbor. Spanning 200,000 square kilometers across Western Australia and South Australia, the Nullarbor is the largest continuous exposure of limestone karst on Earth. Formed as a seafloor during the Cenozoic era, the Eucla Basin limestone was uplifted 15 million years ago. Acidic rainfall dissolved the soft stone, creating over 10,000 mapped blowholes and deep cave systems. At Cocklebiddy Cave, subterranean passages drop into massive freshwater lakes, extending over 6 kilometers underground, revealing a hidden drainage network beneath the surface with no permanent rivers. Fact 42. The spring-cut canyon of Boodjamolla Gorge, located on Wanyee country in northwest Queensland, Boodjamolla Gorge showcases dramatic stream incision through resistant rock. Over 30 million years, Lawn Hill Creek carved a canyon 60 meters deep through Proterozoic sandstone and Cambrian limestone. The gorge is sustained by subterranean springs emerging from the Barkley Tableland karst aquifer, discharging 1,000 liters of water per second year-round. This constant spring flow maintains a lush tropical microclimate inside the canyon, surrounded by dry spinifex hills. Fact 41. The active seismic rift of the Meckering Fault. Western Australia sits on the Yilgarn Craton, one of the oldest and most stable geological blocks on Earth. Yet on the 14th of October 1968, a magnitude 6.5 earthquake struck the wheatbelt town of Meckering, 130 kilometers east of Perth. The intraplate quake ruptured a 37-kilometer surface fault trace with a vertical offset of up to 2.4 meters, buckling railway lines and pipelines. The event proved that even ancient continental shields accumulate tectonic stress capable of producing surface ruptures. Fact 40. The boundary of the Great Dividing Range in Victoria. An invisible topographic divide cuts across Victoria, separating northward drainage into the Murray River from streams flowing south into Bass Strait. Unlike mountain chains formed by active plate collisions, the Great Dividing Range in Western Victoria presents a subtle landscape of uplifted basalt plains and eroded granite. Formed through intraplate mantle plumes and continental rifting during the breakup of Gondwana 80 million years ago, this divide controls regional rainfall distribution, soil chemistry, and stream dynamics across southern Australia. Fact 39. The overhanging shelter of Gabonmung. In southwestern Arnhem Land, on Jawoyn country, sits the rock shelter of Gabonmung. Situated on a sandstone plateau, this structural recess cave features a massive roof supported by 36 bedrock pillars. Radiocarbon dating by Australian National University researchers confirmed human occupation at the site dating back 35,000 years, with charcoal layers and fallen ceiling fragments bearing mineral pigments. Natural erosion hollowed out soft quartz sandstone beneath a quartzite cap, which human occupants modified by removing stone columns to enlarge the living floor, creating one of the oldest structurally altered rock shelters on Earth. Fact 38. The subterranean coal fire of Burning Mountain. Near Wingan in New South Wales, within the Upper Hunter Shire, lies an underground seam fire that has burned continuously for thousands of years. Known to the Wonnarua people as Mount Wingan, the site is powered by a subterranean coal seam belonging to the Permian Greta coal measures. Ignited roughly 6,000 years ago, the fire progresses southwards at approximately 1 meter per year at depths of 30 meters. The intense heat bakes overlying sandstone into bright red clinker, venting sulfurous fumes and steam through surface fissures. Fact 37. The spherical granite boulders of Kalu Kalu. In the Northern Territory, 100 kilometers south of Tennant Creek, lie the giant stone spheres of Kalu Kalu, also known as the Devil's Marbles. Situated on Kaititi, Aliaware, Walpuri, and Wakaya country, these granite tors formed over 1.6 billion years ago when molten magma cooled beneath the surface. As surrounding rock eroded away, the granite experienced chemical weathering along rectangular joint lines. Water percolating through fractures dissolved mineral edges, while extreme temperature shifts caused outer rock layers to peel off in concentric sheets, leaving rounded boulders up to 6 meters in diameter. Fact 36. The flammable methane seeps of the Surat Basin. In southern Queensland, natural hydrocarbon seeps emerged along river valleys long before commercial gas extraction altered the landscape. Where coal seams of the Jurassic Walloon coal measures lie close to the surface, natural fractures allow pressurized methane gas to migrate upward through alluvial gravel travels and bubble into riverbeds. Early settlers documented gas bubbling through waterholes along the Condamine River. Isotope analysis by CSIRO confirmed that these emissions originate from subterranean coal beds where groundwater movement releases methane from the carbon matrix. Fact 35. The reversed flow of the ancestral Murray River. The modern path of the Murray River was fundamentally altered by tectonic uplift along the Cadell Fault near Echuca. Roughly 25,000 years ago, during the late Pleistocene epoch, displacement along the fault line lifted a stone block 12 meters high across the existing river corridor. The rising ground dammed the Murray River, creating a temporary inland body known as Lake Barmer. The trapped river rerouted south around the block into the channel of the Goulburn River before cutting a new path westward, permanently altering the river network across the Victorian and New South Wales border. Fact 34. The underground labyrinth of the Jenolan Caves. Located in the Blue Mountains of New South Wales, the Jenolan Caves represent one of the oldest open cave systems in the world. Carved out of Silurian limestone dated to 430 million years ago, the subterranean network spans over 40 kilometers of mapped passages. Potassium-argon dating of clay minerals by CSIRO researchers revealed that the caves began forming 340 million years ago when acidic groundwater dissolved fractures in lime rock. Passages descend through multiple vertical levels, revealing underground rivers and massive breakdown chambers. Fact 33. The calcite speleothems of Buchan Caves. Beneath the forested hills of East Gippsland in Victoria lie the Buchan Caves, a limestone complex formed within early Devonian Buchan Group strata. Roughly 400 million years ago, shallow marine waters deposited rich layers of shells and coral that lithified into dense, grey limestone. As rainfall absorbed carbon dioxide from soil, weak carbonic acid percolated downward through joint plains, carving out subterranean chambers. Drip water built massive calcite formations, including stalactites and flowstone terraces, that record regional climate fluctuations over hundreds of thousands of years. Fact 32. The fossil sea floor of the Emu Bay Shale. On the north coast of Kangaroo Island in South Australia, the Emu Bay Shale exposes an extraordinary marine ecosystem from the early Cambrian period, roughly 514 million years ago. Formed in a shallow offshore basin, fine-grained mud rapidly buried soft-bodied organisms before oxidation could destroy them. Excavations led by the South Australian Museum revealed exceptionally detailed fossils of early arthropods, including giant trilobites with preserved eye lenses and digestive tracts, providing physical evidence of the Cambrian explosion. Fact 31. The meteor's impact ejecta of the Lake Pakacha structure. Deep within the Musgrave Ranges of northern South Australia, remote sensing and aeromagnetic surveys identified the buried signature of an ancient impact event. Known as the Lake Pakacha structure, the circular geophysical anomaly sits hidden beneath desert sand and sheet wash sediments. Magnetic field variations mapped by Geoscience Australia suggest a deeply buried central uplift zone formed when an extraterrestrial body struck Proterozoic crystalline basement rock, fracturing the crust over a wide radius without leaving an obvious surface crater. Fact 30. The relict peatland of the Wingecarribee Swamp. In the southern highlands of New South Wales, the Wingecarribee Swamp represents a rare subalpine peatland ecosystem built over thousands of years. Located in a low-gradient valley, cold groundwater seeps nourish dense growths of sphagnum moss and sedges, creating a carpet of organic material up to 6 meters deep. Radiocarbon analysis of lower peat layers revealed that the wetland began accumulating organic matter over 15,000 years ago as the last glacial period waned, preserving ancient pollen profiles that record shifting vegetation patterns. But what happens when modern human extraction intersects with these ancient hydrological systems? Fact 29. The coastal sand dunes of K'gari. Rising to 240 meters above sea level, K'gari, formerly known as Fraser Island, is the largest sand island in the world. Situated on Butchulla country off the Queensland coast, the island consists entirely of wind-blown silica sand accumulated over 2 million years. Longshore drift currents transported granite quartz sand northward from New South Wales river basins. As sea levels fluctuated during Pleistocene glacial cycles, onshore winds blew sand into massive parabolic dunes. Thermoluminescence dating by the University of Queensland showed that the oldest dune systems sit on weathered iron oxide hardpans, trapping rainwater to form over 100 perched freshwater lakes. Fact 28. The weathered elevation of Mount Zile. Rising to 1,531 meters above sea level in the McDonnell Ranges of the Northern Territory, Mount Zile holds the title of the highest elevation point in Australia west of the Great Dividing Range. Classified geologically as an erosion-resistant ridge within the Proterozoic Amadeus igneous basin, the peak is composed of dense quartzite and granulite facies metamorphic rock. While softer sedimentary strata eroded away over millions of years, this structural outlier held firm. Geological mapping by the Northern Territory Geological Survey confirmed that Pleistocene glacial and fluvial activity never reached these arid heights, leaving the ridge preserved through mineral hardness. Fact 27. The artificial summit of the Mount Lyell tailings. Near Queenstown on the west coast of Tasmania, the landscape features massive artificial landforms generated by over a century of open-cut copper mining. Between 1896 and 1994, the Mount Lyell Mining and Railway Company processed over 100 million tons of ore, dumping pyritic tailings directly into the King River and Macquarie Harbour. Environmental surveys conducted by the Tasmanian Department of State Growth mapped waste rock dumps and slag heaps that restructured local catchment topography, altering stream gradients and leaving barren, acid sulfate slopes visible on high-resolution satellite imagery. Fact 26. The subterranean fish sanctuary of the Dalhousie Springs. Situated in Witjira National Park in northern South Australia, on country belonging to the Irrawanyeri people, Dalhousie Springs represents a unique artesian discharge complex. Outpouring over 60 million litres of warm, mineralized water daily from the Great Artesian Basin, the natural thermal springs maintain a constant water temperature between 38 and 46 degrees Celsius. Hydrogeological modelling and isotope dating by CSIRO revealed that water resurfacing today entered underground sandstone aquifers over 1 million years ago, providing a stable freshwater habitat that allowed endemic fish species like the Dalhousie catfish to survive in the Simpson Desert. Fact 25. The natural arch of London Bridge at Port Campbell. Along the shipwreck coast of Western Victoria, the limestone arch known as London Bridge demonstrated rapid coastal geomorphic transformation. Carved out of Miocene Port Campbell limestone by ocean waves, the structure originally formed a double-arch natural bridge connected to the mainland. On January 15, 1990, the inner arch closest to the cliff collapsed into the ocean, leaving 2 tourists stranded on the newly formed stack. Photogrammetric surveys and marine bathymetry conducted by Parks Victoria showed that continuous hydraulic action and salt crystallization weakened joint planes in the soft limestone. Fact 24. The Great Divide bisecting the Murray-Darling and coastal basins. The Great Dividing Range silently bisects eastern Australia over a distance of 3,500 kilometres. Running from Cape York Peninsula down to western Victoria, this subtle watershed determines whether a drop of rain flows east into the Pacific Ocean or west into the 1 million square kilometre Murray-Darling Basin. Satellite radar topography mapped by Geoscience Australia highlights that in areas like the Darling Downs, the divide is not a jagged peak, but an almost imperceptible flat ridge of weathered basalt, where a deviation of a few metres redirects water across entire continental catchments. Fact 23. The industrial ignition of the Newcastle coal seam. The Hunter River estuary in New South Wales flows through a landscape shaped by early industrial coal extraction. In June 1955, major flooding along the Hunter River exposed abandoned 19th century underground mine workings near Newcastle. Historical cadastral maps and mine plans held by the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries revealed that early coal shafts had breached natural alluvial aquifers, creating subterranean drainage channels that permanently altered local water tables and increased acid mine drainage into the Hunter River Basin. Fact 22. The quaking peat mat of Lake Butler. Situated in the southeast region of South Australia, Lake Butler contains a rare floating peat wetland. Formed in a coastal interdunal depression isolated from ocean access, sphagnum moss and aquatic vegetation grew inward across the water surface, weaving a floating organic mat over a deep water column. Sediment coring and pollen analysis conducted by University of Adelaide researchers demonstrated that the peat layer has floated over the underlying limestone aquifer for more than 4,000 years, responding dynamically to seasonal groundwater fluctuations. Fact 21. The sand spit barrier of the Coorong. Stretching over 130 kilometres along the South Australian coast, the Younghusband Peninsula is a narrow sand spit separating the shallow lagoon of the Coorong from the Southern Ocean. Constructed by longshore sediment transport over the last 7,000 years, the barrier consists of wind-blown dune sand sitting on consolidated Pleistocene calcarenite. Multibeam bathymetry and satellite imagery mapped by the South Australian Department for Environment and Water show that wave refraction and storm surges continually breach and reshape the sand spit, shifting the position of the Murray mouth. Fact 20. The fossilised coral reef of the Canning Basin. In the Kimberley region of Western Australia, the Devonian Reef Complex of the Canning Basin exposes a massive fossilised barrier reef system created 375 million years ago. Stretching over 350 kilometers, features like Winjana Gorge and Geikie Gorge were constructed not by modern corals, but by extinct stromatoporoids and algae in a warm, shallow sea. Airborne magnetic surveys and drill core analysis conducted by the Geological Survey of Western Australia mapped the ancient reef structures beneath hundreds of meters of cover, providing a complete 3D model of a Paleozoic marine ecosystem. But how do these hidden geological structures shape the modern human footprint sitting directly above them? Fact 19. The post-glacial erosion of the Royal National Park gorges. South of Sydney, the Hacking River has carved deep sandstone gorges into the Warrenora Plateau. Formed within Triassic Hawkesbury sandstone, the river channel exploited vertical joint fractures, cutting downward as sea levels stabilized following the last ice age 6,000 years ago. Geomorphology studies by the University of Sydney revealed that steep shale beds underlying sandstone cliff faces periodically erode during high rainfall events, triggering slope collapses and rockfalls that continue to reshape the valley profile today. Fact 18. The deep crustal rifting of the Tasman Sea. East of the Australian continent lies a submerged rift zone formed 80 million years ago during the late Cretaceous epoch. As Lord Howe Rise separated from the Australian mainland, mantle upwelling stretched and thinned continental crust, forming a deep ocean basin. Marine geophysical surveys conducted by Geoscience Australia mapped extinct mid-ocean ridge structures beneath 4,000 meters of water, proving that eastern Australia was once bordered by an active volcanic rifting system that ceased spreading 52 million years ago. Fact 17. The cliff collapse blocks of the Blue Mountains. At Echo Point near Katoomba, the dramatic sandstone cliffs of the Blue Mountains showcase physical weathering. Composed of Permian shale and Triassic quartz sandstone, vertical escarpments experience severe freeze-thaw cycles and groundwater seepage. Lacking basal support as softer shale layers wear away, large sandstone blocks fracture along vertical stress joints and detach from the cliff face, tumbling into the Jameson Valley to form massive talus slopes at the base of the escarpment. Fact 16. The high-capacity gravel aquifer of the Hunter Valley. Invisible beneath agricultural land of the Hunter Valley lies an alluvial aquifer system constructed during Pleistocene flood events. Torrential glacial meltwater rivers deposited hundreds of meters of coarse gravel and quartz sand across the valley floor. Hydrogeological monitoring by the New South Wales Department of Planning and Environment confirms that the unconfined gravel aquifer stores billions of litres of naturally filtered groundwater, supplying key irrigation networks while remaining vulnerable to contamination from adjacent surface mining operations. Fact 15. The mineral depositing spring of Spa Country. Around Daylesford and Hepburn Springs in central Victoria, a complex volcanic aquifer continuously pumps carbonated mineral water to the surface. Rainwater filtering through fractures in Ordovician slate picks up dissolved iron, silica, and bicarbonate from deep mantle gas seeps associated with the newer volcanics province. As pressurized water reaches the surface, carbon dioxide escapes, causing iron minerals to precipitate out and paint natural spring basins in rich orange and yellow ochre tones. Fact 14. The diverted drainage of the Snowy Mountains. In southern New South Wales, the Snowy River Basin experienced catastrophic stream piracy caused by tectonic tilting during the Tertiary period. As the eastern continental margin uplifted, headwater streams originally flowing west into the Murray-Darling system were captured by steep eastward draining channels. Geological mapping by the Geological Survey of New South Wales showed that diverted torrents carved deep gorges through solid granite, redirecting water directly into Bass Strait before construction of the Snowy Mountains hydroelectric scheme. Fact 13. The structural bottleneck of the Barwon Gorge. At Brewarrina in outback New South Wales, the Barwon River cuts through an outcrop of hard Cretaceous silcrete. On Nemba country, this natural geological bottleneck creates a series of permanent river rapids. For thousands of years, traditional owners utilized the stone shelf to construct the Brewarrina fish traps, an intricate network of dry stone walls and holding ponds spanning 400 meters across the riverbed, representing one of the oldest surviving human-engineered stone structures on Earth. Fact 12. The historical brine licks of the Lake Eyre Basin. Deep within the central arid zone lies Kati Thandar Lake Eyre, a massive endorheic lake system covering 9,500 square kilometers. On Arabana country, the lake bed sits 15 meters below sea level, acting as the ultimate drainage sink for a 1.2 million square kilometer basin. Dissolved salts transported by ancestral rivers over millions of years accumulated in the closed basin, forming a continuous salt crust up to 50 centimeters thick that crystallizes as surface floodwaters evaporate under intense heat. Fact 11. the elevated drainage divide of the Atherton Tablelands. Rising 1,000 metres above sea level in far north Queensland, the Atherton Tablelands sit atop an elevated volcanic plateau. Basaltic lava flows erupted during the Neogene and Quaternary periods buried ancient river valleys, creating a high-altitude plateau that acts as a major drainage divide. Water falling on the eastern margin feeds short, high-energy coastal streams like the Barron River, while rainfall on western slopes flows into the Gulf of Carpentaria via the Mitchell River system. Fact 10. The astronomical alignments of the Wurdi-Youang stone arrangement. Near Little River in Victoria, on Wadawurrung country, lies Wurdi-Youang, an ancient stone arrangement constructed from native basalt boulders. Archaeological and astronomical studies conducted by CSIRO and Monash University researchers revealed that the oval-shaped arrangement features specific stone alignments that track the setting sun at solstices and equinoxes, demonstrating precise observational science integrated into landscape architecture thousands of years ago. But what happens when these ancient features face the full impact of modern mapping technologies? Fact 9. The relict clay pans of the Willandra Lakes. In southwestern New South Wales, the dry lake beds of the Willandra Lakes region represent an Ice Age hydrological network preserved in sand dunes. Situated on Pakunti, Muti Muti, and Giampa country, these ancient lakes filled with glacial meltwater from the Great Dividing Range between 50,000 and 19,000 years ago. As the climate dried, the lakes evaporated, leaving lunettes along their eastern shores. Wind erosion continually exposes Pleistocene fireplaces and human burials at Lake Mungo, providing physical evidence of continuous human occupation through major climatic transitions. Fact 8. The drowned palaeochannels of the Sahul Shelf. Beneath the shallow waters of the Timor and Arafura seas lies the Sahul Shelf, a submerged land bridge that once connected Australia to New Guinea. During the last glacial maximum, 20,000 years ago, sea levels were 120 metres lower than today, exposing over 2 million square kilometres of dry land. High-resolution multi-beam sonar bathymetry conducted by Geoscience Australia mapped drowned river valleys, freshwater lakes, and ancient shorelines across the shelf, proving human populations navigated river systems now buried beneath seawater. Fact 7. The buried rift zone of the Deniliquin structure. Deep beneath the Murray Basin in southern New South Wales lies what may be the largest impact structure on Earth. First identified in 2020 by geologist Tony Yates using aeromagnetic and gravity anomaly data, the Deniliquin structure measures roughly 520 kilometers in diameter. Buried beneath 2 to 3 kilometers of Paleozoic and Mesozoic sediments, the structure features a central magnetic dome flanked by concentric ring faults, marking a crustal impact or rifting event that occurred during the late Devonian period. Fact 6. The solitary basalt monolith of Big Rock. Rising above the Werribee Plains in Victoria, the basalt outcrop known as Big Rock stands as an isolated volcanic neck from the Newer Volcanics province. Formed roughly 2 million years ago when molten lava welled up through fractures in underlying sedimentary basement, the dense olivine basalt resisted erosion while surrounding ash beds wore away. Used for millennia by Wadawurrung people as a navigational landmark, the outcrop demonstrates how localized volcanic eruptions restructured the topography of the southern Victorian plains. Fact 5. The cold spring-fed discharge of the Roper River. In the Northern Territory, the Roper River flows through a dry savanna landscape while maintaining a continuous discharge. Unlike surrounding seasonal streams that dry up during the winter dry season, the Roper River maintains a baseline flow exceeding 14,000 litres per second. Hydrogeological tracing by the Northern Territory Department of Environment, Parks and Water Security confirmed that the river is fed by deep, pressurised discharges from the Tyndall limestone aquifer, which stores underground water recharged during prehistoric monsoon periods. Fact 4. The hand-excavated channels of Budge Bim. In southwestern Victoria, on Gunditjmara country, lies the Budge Bim aquaculture system, one of the oldest human-engineered stone structures on Earth. Formed by basaltic lava flows from Mount Eccles 37,000 years ago, the rocky terrain was modified over 6,000 years ago by traditional owners who carved channels, weir pools, and stone race systems into volcanic basalt to manage eel populations and water levels. The full extent of this complex hydrological infrastructure was mapped after bushfires cleared dense vegetation in 2020, leading to its World Heritage listing. Fact 3. The structural vortex of the Devil's Marbles plunge pools. In the dry interior of the Northern Territory, episodic desert floods carve circular basins into solid granite bedrock. Where seasonal torrents flow over jointed granite outcrops near Kalu Kalu, trapped quartz gravel acts as a natural drill, spinning in circular currents during flash floods. This mechanical abrasion hollows out spherical plunge basins and smooth channels in stone that remains dry for most of the year. Fact 2. The radioactive granite of the Mount Weld carbonatite. Deep beneath the red soil of Western Australia's Goldfields region sits Mount Weld, a 2-billion-year-old volcanic pipe rich in rare earth elements and trace radioactive minerals. Formed when carbonatite magma intruded through ancient Yilgarn craton basalt, the volcanic core underwent millions of years of intense tropical weathering. The process leached away soluble minerals, leaving a concentrated residual clay layer containing neodymium, praseodymium, and europium beneath a flat, featureless plain. Fact 1. The tectonic coordinate drift of the Australian continent. Australia sits on the fastest-moving continental tectonic plate on Earth, drifting northeastward towards Indonesia at a rate of 7 centimeters per year. Because satellite navigation systems rely on fixed global coordinates, this constant physical movement caused Australian map grid positions to drift out of alignment with real-world satellite measurements. In 2017, Geoscience Australia formally shifted the nation's official geographical coordinates by 1.8 meters to the northeast, bringing local cadastral maps, road networks, and property boundaries back into line with global positioning satellites. What kept these anomalies hidden for so long was not their depth or remote location, but the assumption that a flat horizon represents an unchanging basement. Vast areas of the continent remain mapped only by broad aeromagnetic lines, and subterranean fluid flows across the deep basins continue to be modeled rather than measured directly. The map sheet presents a fixed surface, yet the ground beneath it remains in constant physical movement. Which geographical feature in your own state or territory has always struck you as out of place? Or which item on this list caught you off guard? Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe to keep exploring the hidden forces that shape our landscape.